What makes you think you'll conquer us without a fight?
Please silence all electronic devices. Our program is about to begin.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the president of SkySevenVentures, co-founder of XM Satellite Radio, and the vice chairman of the board of the Space Foundation, Lon Levin.
Good evening, everyone. Yes, you heard right. Vice Chairman of the Space Foundation. There's only one of two explanations for this one. Either incredibly bad judgment or, no, actually, we'll stick with that. We'll stick with that one, I think. I think that's probably the best. But actually, no, wait, this is the aerospace industry. It's an anomaly. It's an anomaly. You're in the aerospace industry. I know that you have heard that phrase. I mean, it's almost poetry in the industry. You know, something happens in space, it's not like someone's gonna go up and check it right away. So you just try to buy a little time. It's an anomaly. This has happened to you. You go into the chief engineer, you say, there was no fuel on the second stage. It's an anomaly. Or how about this? How about this one? Actually they repeat it back to you. Just buy an actually a little more time. They go, yes, the solar panels were not bolted to the satellite. It's an anomaly. Okay, now I feel better. It's an anomaly. Great. It would be great if you can use it in real life, of course. You know, hey, officer, that's my car that went through that store window. It's an anomaly. Or how about, honey, yesterday I woke up next to your best friend. It's an anomaly. Welcome, everyone, to the 24th Annual Hall of Fame, Space Technology Hall of Fame dinner. It is so good to have everyone here. We have an amazing evening planned for you. We have Mark Stevenson, who's going to speak to us. We have two amazing technologies, flexible aerogel and Firewatch. But before we get to that, I want to talk to you about a few things. How many people were here last year? Okay, that's great. Obviously, you didn't read the fine print that I was the MC, but I appreciate you being here. And as you guys know, we had a great time last year, but I don't want to talk to you. Right now, I want to speak with the people who were not here last year, and of course, those of you who were too drunk to remember. Because, you see, I have firsthand experience with this award. In 2002, my colleagues and I actually got this award for satellite radio. And I was a designated person to get the award. And I remember being so proud. My name is called. I'm walking up on stage. And I remember the noise getting louder and louder and louder. And then I'm finally on stage and I'm looking out and I'm realizing that people care more about whether they have 3 or 4 raspberries in their dessert plate than my entire Lifetime Achievement Award. But that's not going to happen at these awards. No more, never again, not on my watch. Everyone's getting the same amount of raspberries. That's the way it's going to go. All right, we try to make this as entertaining as possible. And what better way to keep you entertained than to introduce the judges? That's certainly my book, though, very entertaining. Anyway, let me tell you about these people, these dedicated people, these faceless, dedicated. Actually, they're not, faceless is a metaphor. They're really not faceless. Well, the ones I know have faces. I can't speak for the ones I don't know, but I'm pretty sure that most of them have faces. Let me tell you about these people. These people, they spend hours and hours and hours setting up a 15-minute phone call where they all get together and then they decide who wins the 2 awards. I do want to introduce them to you. I'm going to ask you to hold your applause. I'm going to ask them to stand. I'm going to ask you all to hold your applause. I know there are some people who feel the compulsion. It's very Pavlovian. You say a name, you have to applaud. We forgive you. You have to kiss your ass's boss. I get that part too. But I'm going to ask I'm going to ask our judges to stand. If there is anybody else who would like to bask in their glory and stand as well, this is your show. Please do so as well. All right, let me introduce the judges to you. The incomparable Robert Appleton, Executive Director, H.R. MacMillan Space Center, Vancouver, BC, Canada. It always happens. The indefatigable General Dwayne W. Deal, United States Air Force, retired, Senior Vice President for National Security Programs, SGT Incorporated, Greenbelt, Maryland. The irresistible J. Walter Falconer, President, Strategic Space Solutions, LLC, Glenelg, Maryland. The intriguing Richard A. Garriott, Vice Chairman of SpaceVentures, Vienna, Virginia. The inspiring Amitba Ghosh, PhD, planetary scientist for the NASA Mars Exploration Rover mission, Washington, D.C. The incredible Rachel Stephen-Smith, Minister Counselor for Innovation, Industry, Science, and Research, Embassy of Australia, Washington, D.C. And the incandescent Norimitsu Kamamori, Director, Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, Washington, D.C. Everyone, let's thank all our judges for the great work that they did. And by the way, they all have faces, and so I'm feeling a lot better about this. Now I want to thank someone else who actually I forgot to thank, and that is the amazing Broadmoor Hotel. They just do such a fantastic job for us all week. The managers, the staff, just an amazing job. But I'm thinking the guy who cleans the goose poop around the lake, I think he was on vacation this week, I'm pretty sure. But besides him, they do a great job. Okay, we're moving right along. These are award shows. This is going great. I want to introduce you now to our host, Gwynne Shotwell, the president of SpaceX. SpaceX is doing amazing things. They're revolutionizing how we think about our industry. They have a launch coming up. We certainly wish them all the best of luck. And we're hoping for an historic moment very shortly. Now, when people introduce people, they often say, my best friend, or, you know, I know this person for years, and this is my best buddy. But I've known Gwynne now for 4 years, and I want to assure you all that we have an exceedingly superficial relationship. So ladies and gentlemen, a very casual acquaintance of mine, Gwynne Shotwell.
I'm crushed. I can't finish. I thought we were best friends. I know his kids. At any rate, I wanted to thank the Space Foundation for actually allowing us to host this dinner again, and the Broadmoor Hotel. It's been a great week for us. Hopefully it's been a great week for you all as well. Yay. This is clap time. Yay. Since last, I want to kind of bring this back a little bit to some of the reasons why we're here. Since last year's symposium, we have lost 461 U.S. servicemen and women to the conflict in the Middle East. We currently still have over 50,000 deployed in combat zones and almost 200,000 still deployed overseas. Hopefully, well, first of all, I wanted to thank them for their service. But also, hopefully this week we spent some time thinking about how we as a community could better serve them, to think about probably an unrealistic, but a great future to think about where we don't have to lose any of their lives. Okay. I also wanted to thank the almost 1,800 men and women at SpaceX who have given up yet another year of social life, good relationships with their family, to work hard on the company's behalf to bring the Dragon spacecraft ready for flight to hopefully berth with the International Space Station this year. It's an extraordinary group of people. They're so dedicated, they're so smart, and they still seem really happy, which is awesome. So we do have a flight upcoming. April 30th is our current launch date. 2 days ago, I was a little nervous about it, but actually today I'm feeling good about April 30th. But regardless, it will be shortly, and we're all looking forward to that. Yay, thank you. As we did last year, in lieu of thousands of table gifts, we did do a donation on each of your behalf to the Air Force Aid Society, which is the official Air Force charity. But we did bring a bunch of space junk with us here to the conference, and so we want to get rid of it before we go home. And so if you look at your little SpaceX thank you cards, this is thank you for joining and thank you for participating. If you have a purple dragon sticker on your card, I think there's one or so at each table, you win a flying Falcon 9. Adam, you don't get yours. You work for me. You don't get yours. No, you have to give that to somebody else. Thank you. General, that's yours. All right. He's right here in front, and he's holding it up like I'm going to let him keep it. Okay, all right. So keep your little card with the purple dragon logo, and we will have our lovely ladies out in the hallway out there, and we'll exchange your card for a dragon model. Falcon 9 and Dragon, it actually flies. Yay, it's great, fun. Okay, so this is great, you guys, this is awesome. So thank you. I'm about ready to go, so you guys got to be quiet. Stop. Woo, woo. Be quiet. Thank you. Thanks again for joining us tonight. I'll leave the stage, thank goodness, right? And but I will still continue to haze you with a 4-minute SpaceX video. Enjoy. Thanks.
Gwynne, thank you so much. SpaceX, thank you so much. You're doing such amazing things. Actually, everyone, that was a hologram of Gwynne. She had a senior staff meeting that she had to attend in some other time-space dimension, but that's how SpaceX rolls. But thankfully, at least it was a hologram. All right, now I'm going to tell you about these two amazingly way cool technologies. The first one is called Firewatch. Firewatch is the most used forest fire detection technology in the world today, covering almost 7 million acres of forest. It started with Germany's Aerospace Center, DLR, as you know it. They started to analyze comet gas and particle emissions with this technology, and then they partnered with IQ Wireless, and as a result, they came up with this extraordinary technology. Here's how extraordinary it is. They can detect a tiny fire during the daylight within 6 minutes. They can detect a tiny fire at night within 12 minutes, and within 2 minutes, they can detect a bunch of 19-year-old boys sitting around a campfire lighting farts. It's an amazing technology. Flexible aerogel, another amazing, wonderful technology. Let me tell you about it. It was started with a lightweight silica-based material that they realized had revolutionary applications. First started with NASA, then NASA partnered with Aspen Aerogel. They developed this amazing material. It's now used in engine testing, in extreme weather shoes, and also for building insulation. In fact, the Department of Energy did some testing on it, and if you could put in the walls just 1/4 of an inch thick, it actually provides 30% more insulation. And what I figured out is that if you put the extreme shoes on in that same room, your feet will catch fire. So I've spent my entire career pretending like I know what I'm talking about. I think you should watch the video.
The 2012 Space Technology Hall of Fame. Exploring the vastness of space demands innovative new technologies. The journey continues to expand our ability far beyond what many believed possible. Today and every day, the knowledge, skills, and technologies developed to get us out there serve us well here on Earth. From modest conveniences to life-saving devices, space technology is an essential part of our lives. The Space Technology Hall of Fame honors those who transform technologies originally developed for space exploration into the products and services that improve the quality of our lives on Earth. Firewatch. Each year, vital ecosystems, infrastructure, and lives are lost as an average of more than 74 million acres of forest is destroyed by wildfires worldwide. Today, space technology provides a solution. Technology developed by Germany's Aerospace Center, or DLR, to analyze comet gas and particle emissions has been optimized to create a terrestrial detection tool known as Firewatch. A successful partnership between DLR and the private firm IQ Wireless has created a product that now monitors more than 7 million acres worldwide, from Europe and Australia to Mexico. DLR has further developed and optimized the software and optical sensors, while IQ Wireless provides system components and setup and service. The Firewatch system consists of a computer-based configuration of high-resolution optical sensors and a remote central office to provide a detection rate of over 90%. Installed on towers or masts, individual Firewatch cameras can monitor hundreds of square miles of forest in high resolution. The system ensures early fire detection in virtually any weather, day or night. Firewatch image processing software analyzes the motion, structure, and brightness of smoke plumes and automatically triggers an alert within 6 minutes during daylight and within 12 minutes during the night. Monitoring personnel receive target images and coordinates to determine and alert the appropriate response resources. Today, Firewatch is the most widely used system in the world for the early detection of forest fires. Space technology, protecting lives, property, and the environment on Earth. Flexible aerogel. Low density, lightweight, and unmatched insulating capability are exceptional characteristics that made silica aerogel an ideal candidate for cryogenic applications. Unfortunately, it was also highly fragile and expensive to manufacture, so NASA took up the challenge of making it affordable and easy to use. The concept of a flexible aerogel was introduced by James Fessmeyer, Senior Principal Investigator of the Cryogenics Test Laboratory at Kennedy Space Center. Working through a small business innovation research contract, the startup company Aspen Systems Incorporated joined the challenge and helped produce the world's first aerogel composite blanket specimens. Continued work with the newly established Aspen Aerogels Incorporated led to a revolutionary new flexible aerogel used by NASA for cryogenic applications in rocket engine test stands, launch vehicles, and life support systems. 3 variations, cryogel, pyrogel, and spaceloft, are now used in industrial, construction, refrigeration, and automotive applications. According to the U.S. Department of Energy, a 1/4 inch thick strip of the product, when applied to wall studs before the installation of drywall, increases the wall's insulation factor by 30%. Aerogel has proven to be an effective barrier to extreme temperatures as insoles for mountain climbers and endurance runners in outdoor apparel applications. Aspen Aerogels is the leading provider in the United States, producing nearly 20 million square feet of material per year. Aerogel will continue to provide high-performance systems and products for extreme environments on Earth and in space. Tonight, we induct into the Space Technology Hall of Fame. Firewatch. Flexible aerogel. The Space Foundation is proud to honor the people and organizations whose time and dedication successfully transform technologies originally developed for space into the applications that improve the quality of our lives on Earth.
We're going to give out the awards now. They don't trust me with these awards, so I'm going to ask Gwynne Shotwell to please come back up to the stage, as well as Dr. Leroy Chow, 4-flight veteran of NASA's Astronaut Corps, and also the Space Foundation's Special Advisor for Human Spaceflight. And where's Leroy? Oh, there, here comes. And judging by how much they've had to drink, we're also going to ask Kevin Cook to escort them up to the stage. Kevin Cook is our head of our public awareness. Kevin will direct you. Kevin's the boss here. He'll tell you where to stand. In recognition of their innovative efforts, the following organizations are officially inducted into the Space Technology Hall of Fame 2012. First, for Firewatch, representing the German Aerospace Center, DLR, Dr. Johann Dietrich Runner, Chairman, Executive Board. Representing IQ Wireless, Holger Vogel, Chief Executive Officer. For Flexible Aerogel, representing Aspen Aerogels, Dr. George Gould, Vice President for Research and Development. Representing Aspen Systems, Dr. Kang Lee, President and Chief Executive Officer. And representing NASA Kennedy Space Center, Janet Petrow, Deputy Director. Your flesh is going up. We had a private induction ceremony this afternoon, and we ran out of hors d'oeuvres, so we couldn't invite you, and I apologize for that. But let me tell you the people that we inducted as individuals from these fine two technologies, and their names are the following. For Firewatch, please stand. Not all of you, just the people get the awards. Dr. Eckhard Kurt for Firewatch. Dr. Jörg Nollenberg. Thomas Benke. And Professor Herbert Yawn. For Flexible Aerogel, Kang P. Lee was also inducted. He's up here. Jairi Yu, PhD. James E. Fesmeyer. And Dr. George Gould. Congratulations, one and all. Thank you so much. Okay, you can go now. Thank you. Everyone, please, let's thank them again. Congratulations, everyone. Sure. You guys have been absolutely terrific. Actually, before I get to some special treat, I want to call out somebody. She designed, I guess they're gone now. She designs the medallions for us. She does it free of charge. She does, and we want to thank her. Her name is Darlis Lamb, and she's in the audience. Darlis, thank you so much. A great job. They're beautiful medallions. Thank you, Darlis. And you guys have been so good that we're going to take a picture of you. My friend Tom Kimmel, our official photographer, please, Tom, come on up. All right, everyone, get ready. Okay, wait. Table 62, Ty. All right. Okay, ready? 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you, guys. Oh, that was lame. Yeah, so was the joke. So anyway, you guys have been a terrific audience. I really appreciate it. And you know, it's my job just to get you warm and you know, get you going for our main speaker. But I apologize for what I have to do right now. I got to get something off my chest to my fellow board members, Elliot, to the honorees tonight. I apologize. But last year, 4 months to the day, in North Korea, they had a space symposium. And at that space symposium, they had an awards dinner. And at that awards dinner, they used the same exact jokes that we used last year. Ladies and gentlemen, this is an aerospace industry conference. Those jokes are ITAR export control protected. So from now on, if you want to use them, just tell them to people in the United States. And if you really do want to use them, ask the State Department. I'm sure they'll give you permission within 6 or 7 months, and it won't ruin the timing at all. It'll work out just fine. All right, I would like to now get to our main speaker, our only speaker. Actually, I don't count. Mark Stevenson, author, playwright, comedian, businessman. He has written a brilliant book. I recommend that you all get it. It's called The Optimist Tour of the Future. And what he does is he takes a look at all the new technologies and ideas.
And I'm an optimist.
Puts it all together. And he puts it all together and explains why there's a solid future. Oh, his video's up now.
That's a pretty controversial thing to say.
That's what?
After all, aren't we destroying the planet? Isn't our technology running away with us? Well, the future is going to be different, and we do face some incredible challenges. I just don't accept that means things have to be worse. In fact, I'm going in search of the technology and the people who are working to make our world better. Because the one thing I do know is, if we don't hope for a better future, if we don't train ourselves to see that opportunity, then we certainly won't get it.
Ladies and gentlemen, a very witty and clever man, Mark Stevenson.
Round of applause for Mr. Levin, I think. Fabulous host, a little too good, actually, for my liking. First, can I say what a great honor it is to be asked here to address you, although entirely terrifying. And the terror started when Elliot asked me to register online for the symposium. Now, usually when you register online for a conference, there's a little drop-down box for your title, Mr., Mrs., Miss. If it's a posh academic conference, it might be doctor or prof. The drop-down box for this conference was as long as my arm and eminently terrifying, and included things like field marshal and wing commander, and I felt instantly ashamed that I don't have a number of squadrons under my command. And I realized in that instant this was going to be a very different gig to the one that my mother had asked me to do for a local women's institute. Although I will say my mother's friends are tough, and I would happily go into battle with any of them. Now, while I was researching my book, I looked into the space industry, and I spent some time down at the Mojave spaceport. Now, any of you who've been to Mojave will realize it's not really a throbbing metropolis. It's basically one road with a couple of motels, a few burger joints, a Denny's where they serve the ultimate omelet. That's a lie. And a train depot. So except for the spaceport, there's not much on it. But the people at the spaceport were amazing and kept me deeply entertained. And one of the men I met there is probably known to many of you, a man called Dick Rutan. Ex-fighter pilot, shot down over Vietnam, crashed in the Arctic, had to eject over the English countryside. He crashes a lot. But luckily he didn't crash the Voyager, which many of you know he flew around the Earth on one tank of gas without stopping. And now he's down at Mojave, and at the age of 74 is still a test pilot for high-performance aircraft. So he's a force of nature and no mistake. And while I was talking to him, he said something profound. And I want to share it with you. It's a subtle point, and therefore I've written it down here in my notes word for word because I want you to get the nuance. Here we go. Stephen Hawking is a prick. You're telling me I can't go faster than the speed of light? Fuck you. Never look at a limitation as anything you ever comply with. Only look at it as an opportunity for greatness. Now, Dick also told me that what fighter pilots use for birth control is their personalities. The first lesson here is never take a physicist out for a drink with Dick Rutan. But I do take to heart the second lesson about never looking at limitation as anything you comply with, only as an opportunity for greatness. I mean, I like that because it's in marked contrast to what society tells us and our children. I mean, if you think about it, limitation and constraint is pretty much all we hear about in our politics and our press. If I recall the story of the future I've been used to hearing since I was a boy, it goes something like this. The future's not going to be very good, especially if you vote for that guy. It's much better in the old days, wasn't it? Things are changing too fast. Oh, your job is at risk. The generation below you are feral and dangerous. You can't trust your neighbor or your doctor or your employer. Get your head down, vote for me, buy my paper. I understand. It's not very inspiring, is it? Which is why you guys are so important to the world and actually to me personally. Because you don't buy that narrative, and you never have. And in doing so, I think you speak to something very deep in all of us. When I was 6 years old, I visited my local library in search of a particular book, because by 6, I had decided I was going to be an astronaut, and I knew that any astronaut worth their salt would know the contents of this particular volume. And like many young children, I had become fascinated with space exploration. And I think that's because, as Neil was saying, childhood is defined by exploration. Right? You learn pretty soon if you're going to have any fun at all, you're going to have to go out there and explore. And I figured that if life was exploring, then space exploration was about as much life as you could get. So there I was in Uttoxeter Public Library. Just for context, Uttoxeter is a bit like the Des Moines of England. It's one of those towns you drive past on the way to somewhere more interesting. So I looked, and I looked. I looked for this book, and I couldn't find it. And I thought, well, of course I can't find it. It'll be out on loan. It's such an important book. So I went to the front desk to reserve it. And I said to the librarian, excuse me, I'd very much like to reserve Einstein's Relativity, the Special and General Theories. She was somewhat surprised that a 6-year-old was asking this question. But nonetheless, she looked in her files and told me that they did not stock it. Didn't stock it. Didn't stock it. One of the most important books in the history of human thought. You don't have it in this library, but you do have, I notice, National Lampoon's Up Yourself book. Which is weird because this was rural Staffordshire in 1977. I was literally outraged. And I remember that moment because it was the first time I became aware that being the sort of person who's always exploring and asking questions was not necessarily going to endear me to everyone. It got worse when I went to school. I mean, I entered school pretty optimistic. You know, surely here was a place where questions and a questioning disposition was the modus operandi. Well, most of us know how this goes, right? We have an education system built in the Industrial Revolution on the model of a factory where students are treated like widgets that have to have some skills attached to them, where you all graduate at the same time as if your year of manufacture is the most important thing about you. Where they split the world up into subjects when it's the interplay of things that made learning interesting. I mean, they made learning dull. How did you do that? I mean, that's an incredible achievement. There was a veritable crushing of the questioning disposition. And when parents of young children say to me, Jesus, my kids ask so many questions, I go, don't worry, by the time they've gone to school, they will have stopped. There are numerous studies that now show that educators looking for obedient classrooms actually don't like creative children. This is proven. They find them basically obnoxious. And actually, too many of our organizations treat creative employees with the same level of mistrust, which is how I explain that I've been fired twice. Although my girlfriend reminds me that this may just be a strategy to avoid admitting the fact that I am just obnoxious. What did I do in the dark days of my education? I held on to you guys, taking to heart Mark Twain's famous maxim of never letting your schooling get in the way of your education. You know, I devoured everything I could about space. I wrote to NASA. NASA wrote back. That was a defining moment in my childhood. But sadly, by this time, I realized that I was short-sighted, and therefore, I was unlikely to become a pilot and unlikely to become an astronaut. And I never really got over that. And I still haven't, if I'm honest. But even though I wasn't going to be an astronaut, I did get something else from you guys. And it's a way of thinking about the world that I wasn't getting anywhere else. And it's a way of thinking more of us are going to need if we're going to win the future. Because you all know the world is changing radically. I mean, at this symposium, time and time again, I've heard people talking about the fact that basically we're in the middle of a revolution that will make the Industrial Revolution look like a storm in a teacup. The implications of information technology, nanotechnology, and biotechnology, not just individually, but how they're catalyzing each other into exponential growth, can potentially change the way societies work, and with that, our morals as well. And if you want to look, that revolution is everywhere, whether it's the plummeting cost of genome sequencing, or stem cell-grown body parts, revolutions in manufacture through nanotechnology or 3D printing or synthetic biology that allows us to make fuels from bacteria. Biotech and nanotech are about where computing was in 1965. And the billion-fold improvement we've seen there is coming to these new technologies. And we have to think about how that's going to change things. When people say to me that Elon Musk is crazy because he wants to retire to Mars, I remind them that it was this nation that managed to go to the moon with less processing power than is in my mobile phone. And look at the technologies we have today, including the ones we've inducted into the Space Technology Hall of Fame, and the ones that are going to come. Elon Musk is crazy. Get real. And also, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank SpaceX for sponsoring tonight's event. And I'd like a ride to Mars, if that's okay. But of course, with every opportunity, there's a risk, right? Every technology is dual use. Synthetic biology, new fuels, but also we can recreate long-dead pathogens. And so, therefore, and understandably, many people say we have to step back from the advance of technology. They say we need to slow down, we need to take our foot off the gas. This is not what God ordered. We're losing the essentially human. Einstein said it. He said, it has become appallingly obvious that our technology has exceeded our humanity. Einstein was wrong. Can't believe I just said that. Sorry. But Einstein was wrong. Because attempting to hold on to the essentially human by fighting against the very thing that humans do best, which is evolve through culture and technology, well, that's futile. I mean, whether we like it or not, this is who we are as a species. We innovate, we invent, we create new stuff, and we do it faster and faster as the last load of innovation gives us new tools to do more powerful things this time around. I mean, this is important, right? There is no other animal that does this. There isn't a doggy space symposium gathered in Salt Lake City right now. You know, considering doggy technologies whilst, listening to a doggy author, And that's not happening. I mean, it would be cool, but, Oh, yes. There's always 2 laughs on that slide. The point I'm making here, I'm the first person to show dog porn at the Space Symposium. Oh, there's a 4-star general sitting in front of me. This is bad news. The point I'm making is that the thing that people think is a threat to our humanity is in fact a wholehearted expression of it. And once you get your head around that idea, I think it frees you up to think about your role in shaping the future. So the philosopher Mark Badeau said to me, look, change is going to come. And you can either try to stop it from happening, or you can ignore it. You can try to influence it in a positive direction. Well, stopping it is futile, and ignoring it is simply irresponsible. Which means there is only one game in town, which is trying to influence our culture and our technology in a positive direction. And everybody of good conscience should be in that game. But how do you go about that? Well, I'll turn first to the military. Field Marshal Helmut Karl Bernhard Graf von Moltke, as well as having one of the best names of all time, is cited often as one of the 19th century's greatest military strategists. And as far as I can work out, he was the first person who said, no plan survives contact with the enemy. And so military leaders give those underneath them freedom to improvise when the plan doesn't hold. But they never let them forget what the goal is. The plan may change, but the objective remains the same. And I believe over here you call that commander's intent. Now, what I have learned from working with the extraordinary people I do, whether it be a great artist or a CEO or a fantastic scientist, the ones that get things done, the ones that want to make the world better, they have commander's intent. But they don't call it that. They say, these are my principles. And when things get difficult, or a difficult decision needs to be made, they refer to their principles and not the company manual. And what's more, I've discovered that there's 8 principles that all the people who get things done share. And I call them the 8 principles of successful optimists. And I thought I'd share them with you tonight. And I believe these principles can help anybody learn into the curve of the future and help us win the future. The first is that every single one of them has an unashamed optimism of ambition about the future. They don't feel embarrassed to say that things can get better, no matter what the cynics try to do to them. They don't have a problem imagining a better world and advocating for it. You have to dream. Both Neil deGrasse Tyson and Charles Bolden reference Martin Luther King in their talks here this week. Martin Luther King, a man who did not stand on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and say, I have a 5-point plan. Too many people will tell you that your dreams of a better world are trivial. But you guys know, if you're not prepared to dream something extraordinary, you will never achieve anything extraordinary. The second principle is that they're all engaging in projects that are bigger than they are. So there's a philosopher called Daniel Dennett, and he says one of the occupational hazards of being a philosopher is that at parties, you get asked difficult questions. So, if you're a doctor, people say, oh, I have a bad back. But if you're a philosopher, it's like, what's consciousness? Jesus, I'm just trying to have a beer, He says, one of the questions he's regularly asked is, what is happiness? And he says, the best definition I've come up with is find something more important than you are and dedicate your life to it. Something that so many of you in this room have done. The third principle is these people are very happy to get out of their comfort zone, to find a way to come into contact with new people, new ideas. After all, as Matt Ridley says, every new idea is the result of two other ideas having sex. These people are happy to let their ideas get slutty. This is why MIT makes buildings designed so that people will bump into each other. Okay? It's true, they do that now. And throughout this conference, I've heard the constant refrain about how we all have to think differently. That cliche, we have to think outside the box. But actually, it's very hard to think outside the box if you don't get outside the box. The fourth principle they all have is they know that you are what you do, not what you intend to do. They don't care what you would do if it was next week, or if your manager was more understanding, or if you had more money. They care about what you do now. And I want to demonstrate this with one of my favorite stories. And it's to do with a man called Werner Forssmann. He took this principle to heart and therefore has literally saved the lives of several people in this room. He pioneered something called cardiac catheterization, okay, which is now used as a standard technique to get a drug into the heart, or maybe a camera, or to open up a valve. Now, to be honest, it's not pleasant. Usually they make an incision, usually somewhere in your groin, and they shove a tube up until it gets to your heart. So it's not nice, but it does save your life. Back in 1929, the accepted wisdom was that you couldn't touch the human heart without killing the patient. But Forssmann had seen vets touch animal hearts, and he thought, okay, I don't think that's true. And he came up with the idea of cardiac catheterization, and he goes to his bosses in his hospital, and he says, let me try it out on a patient. And they go, Werner, you are crazy. Go home. He goes, oh, come on. Look, I tell you what, give me a patient that's definitely terminally ill. The worst that can happen is I'll just kill him a bit earlier. They said, Werner, you're crazy. Go home. He goes, okay. Look, I'll do it on myself. They went, now you're definitely crazy. That will never get past the ethics committee. Go home. So what did Werner do? Well, he did what any reasonable physician would do. He decided to seduce the chief nurse. Gerda Ditzen. Why did he do this? Because she had the key to the cupboard with all the instruments that he would need to do it on himself. And as he says in his autobiography, I used to crawl around Gerda like a cat around a cream jug. Who says Germans aren't romantic? Actually, they got on really well. They were actually made for each other. I mean, Gerda was fascinated by surgery and medicine, and eventually, he gained her trust, and he told her about his big idea. And Gerda, I mean, bless her soul, she said, not only will I give you the keys to the cupboard, I'll be your first patient. Do it on me. And so, a few nights later, they sneak into the hospital. Gerda is tied down to an operating table, and Werner is tapping her arm with some iodine. It's ready to make an insertion into the brachial vein. And then he leaves her there. And he goes into the next room, because he doesn't want to hurt her. He just wants the key to the cupboard. And he starts to do the procedure on himself. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to do self-cardiac catheterization. This is not easy, especially if you're the first person in history ever to try it. And he got stuck. He couldn't get it all the way up. So, right. So he thinks, I need some help. He goes back into the other room where Gerda is still tied up and says, you have to help me. And she's furious, with him, really, really angry. But she calms down, and eventually she does. She helps him and gets the catheter into his heart, they think. And they go, great, let's get down the X-ray room. Let's get down the X-ray room. Because we can take an X-ray of this, and then we prove it works. They get down to the X-ray room, where they are confronted by another one of their colleagues, a man called Peter Romius, who immediately starts to try and pull the catheter out of Werner's arm. Werner, being a reasonable physician, does what any reasonable physician would do in this situation, and kicks Peter really hard in the testicles. Repeatedly. Peter, after not a very long time, desists and goes and gets reinforcements. In the meantime, they take the X-ray. And I have the X-ray here. If we can show the slide, that's it. And you can see the wire, that's the catheter going into Werner's heart. So Werner Forssmann won a Nobel Prize for that. I would like to remind you this is a Nobel Prize won by breaking all the rules, seducing a colleague, and kicking another colleague in the testicles. You are what you do. And when I find myself procrastinating, I think of Werner. The fifth principle these people have is they believe that making mistakes is okay. It's just not trying that is irresponsible. The learning guru Ken Robinson says it well. He says, look, being wrong is not the same as being creative. But if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never do anything original. I mean, Edison said, you know, I didn't come up with one way to make a light bulb. I came up with 3,000 ways not to make a light bulb. Even Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones understands this. Odd choice, I grant you. He said, he was asked, how do you come up with all those great riffs? He said, well, I just start playing until I make the right mistake. He's optimistic he'll get something wrong in the creation of something beautiful. Giving yourself permission to make mistakes is hard, but it's actually even harder to give the people below you permission to make mistakes. And I wonder how many of us would have said yes to Werner Forssmann. It's something to ponder. The sixth principle, which you guys all know, is you ask for evidence. Always ask for evidence, because evidence will get you past your prejudice or accepted wisdom. I mean, think about it, right? Engineers do not build bridges from a left-wing or a right-wing perspective. They build bridges from an evidence-based perspective. And over time, bridge building gets better. Politicians, on the other hand, do things from a left-wing or a right-wing perspective, ideology. And if the evidence fits, well, that's kind of cool. But they don't need it. And over time, our politics gets worse. So if you want to get anything done, think like an evidence-based engineer and not like a politician. Now, you can't ignore politics, obviously, that would be naive. And if you do something amazing, the politicians will, of course, come calling. There's a famous story about Michael Faraday demonstrating the Faraday coil to the Chancellor of the Exchequer in the UK. And the Chancellor says, Mr. Faraday, this electricity is all very interesting, but what's it for? And Faraday said, I don't know, Minister, but I'm sure when we find out, you will tax it. This is one that took me a while to work out. The seventh principle is that successful optimists lose a lot in the beginning. You see, they think of these bigger-than-me projects as like a game of several rounds. And in round one, they're happy to lose 9 out of 10. Because in round 2, they'll lose 8 out of 9. And round 3, 7 out of 8. And by the time you've made 30% of a market go, or 30% of your colleagues think your way, the rest will soon follow. But so many people are so terrified of losing the 9, they get into analysis paralysis, they totally forget about winning the 1. And so the successful optimist always concentrates on winning the 1. Now, the final principle I found is the hardest to embrace. And it's simply this, to try and get rid of your own cynicism. Because I don't know about you, but I'm beginning to see that cynicism, naysaying, is becoming embedded in our culture. You know, not just in Britain where we're born cynical, it's kind of in the DNA, it's, you know, here, have some cynicism. But everywhere, you know. And it's seen as wisdom, actually. People think it's wisdom, and I don't think cynicism is wise or even likable. In fact, I think it's a bit like smoking. You know, it may look cool, but it's really bad for you. Worse than that, it's bad for the person standing next to you. It's kind of an excuse and a recipe for laziness. And it's the hardest principle to put into practice, getting rid of cynicism, because it's so seductive, isn't it? It's so easy. I mean, I find myself daily saying, this guy's dream is never going to work, or who am I to try and change the world? But I have realized that cynicism is the ultimate enemy of getting anything done. Now, if you look back at that list of principles, it's one hell of a commander's intent for the future. And which industry do you think embodies this set of principles more than any other? This should be an easy guess, given the audience. Of course, it is your industry. And that has a very important consequence, because what it says to me is that the people in this room are disproportionately important, because you embody a mindset that we're going to need if we're going to get a brighter future. It was your example that kept me exploring. It was your example that was a lifeline to the boy who wanted to keep asking questions. And yes, I know that your industry, like every other one, has its setbacks and its politics and its disappointments. But that is not what defines you, and it never has been. So in closing, I would like to say I think we're entering an incredible time in history. I was recently interviewed by a newspaper, and the journalist said, "Why is futurology back in fashion?" I said, I didn't know it was, but if it is, I'll tell you why. It's because the future is up for grabs for the first time in a long time. Because we can now see that the way we've been organizing our societies isn't working anymore. We can no longer paper over the cracks of our education system, our political system, our financial systems. But at the same time, new ways of thinking and new technologies are giving us the tools to make the changes we need. So we know we've got to change, but we know we can. And so the journalist said to me, "Okay, Mark, what will the world look like in 50 years? I said, "I don't make predictions, other than that Eliot is a genius and will always remain one." I said, because if you look at the history of futurology, actually the predictions made will tell you more about the prejudice of the particular futurologist than what actually happened. But I did say this. I said, the future we will have will be defined by the values that we choose. And we may just about to enter a time in history where those values will be chosen not because of the constraints that we suffer, but by what we are prepared to dream. Dreams of compassion, humanity, and justice. And when it comes to dreaming boldly, I think it's fair to say you guys know a thing or two. And my message to you is please, please don't stop. And do remember what Dick said. A limitation is only an opportunity for greatness. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, so much. Thank you all for coming this evening. Before we end the festivities, we're going to invite up our leader, the CEO of the Space Foundation, Elliot Pullum.
Well, thank you. Wow, what a great looking crowd, even though you didn't smile for that picture earlier. This has just been an off-the-hook week here at the 28th National Space Symposium. And I have so many people to thank. And you know, from beginning, Neil Tyson, Neil, are you with us in the room? To the end, Mark Stevenson. What a group we have had. To our exhibitors, our corporate member companies, our speakers, all of our volunteers, and I would like to especially recognize some people who are very, very important, not only to this event, but to me personally, and that is the Space Foundation team. Would my board members and team members please stand and be recognized so we can show our appreciation? This has been a great week for all of us. I think it's great to end on a note of optimism, that we can all gather here every year and have it feel like a family reunion, and the family gets bigger and bigger, and the love gets bigger and bigger. It's a wonderful thing, and I just want to say thank you to everyone, and as we say goodnight, aloha, let's take a look back at this week as we think about coming back for the 29th National Space Symposium. Thank you. Good night.